So Twitter has just fact-checked Donald Trump for the first time. So you can see here on this new tweet out from Donald Trump earlier today about mail-in voting. There's a new button down here which you can click saying "Get the facts about mail-in voting." Now, before we click on that button and I sort of show you what it does, let me give you guys a little bit of background about how Twitter has been changing their policies more recently. So I've been looking into this, and it turns out that Twitter has been getting much more aggressive about world leaders around the world, in fact, when it comes to misinformation over the past couple months since the pandemic, because we did see a number of world leaders coming out and just giving straight up misinformation about COVID-19, and Twitter was, pretty upset about it and really did start to take it to a number of world leaders who were giving misinformation about the coronavirus specifically. And then they updated their policy saying that in general misinformation is going to be a problem. And so now we've seen for the first time Donald Trump getting an official fact check here about the issue of mail-in voting. So let's take a look at what Donald Trump said, and then I'll show you what the fact check button does. So there is no way, zero, that mail-in ballots will be anything less than substantially fraudulent. Mail-in boxes will be robbed, mailboxes will be robbed, ballots will be forged and even illegally printed out and fraudulently signed. The governor of California is sending ballots to millions of people. Anyone living in the state, no matter who they are or how they got there, will get one. That will be followed up with professionals telling all these people, many of whom, I love the idea of Donald Trump saying "of whom," have never even thought of voting before, how and for whom to vote. This will be a rigged election, no way. So you can see here, this is the button, and when you click on it, it just it doesn't actually have like a sort of specific fact check information. It just basically links you to a bunch of articles talking about Donald Trump's tweet from sort of, I guess you might say, official sources. So, you can see here The Hill, Washington Post, and there's something about CNN talking about it. Now, the interesting thing, and I think that this part will be quite controversial here, is it also links in just sort of relevant journalists who are sort of quote tweeting Donald Trump talking about it. And I do think that is this part here, I think, is a bit controversial. People are debating this part about it. People are more okay with the actual news articles being linked about the tweet, but some people are quite upset about this because some of the tweets might even just be sort of dunking on Donald Trump about various tweets, and so people are kind of upset about that. In fact, I actually want to show you guys this one because this is actually a good fact check though from Grace. Here you can see mail voting fraud is extremely rare, and some experts consider it to be safer than in-person voting, and this is true here, because paper ballots cannot be hacked. Most studies find that voting by mail doesn't help one party or the other. In fact, I talked about that in a recent video of mine. President Trump voted by mail in the Florida primary. So it's really an interesting way to fact check, an interesting approach that Twitter is using, because when you compare it, for instance, to Facebook fact checkers, where Facebook actually has like an army of fact checkers, they've hired a bunch of fact checkers, and they go through and fact check stuff, not just from world leaders, but also just sort of average people, and they might demote content which has incorrect information or harmful information, both again from world leaders and from everyday average people. Now, the sort of bind which Twitter has been finding itself in, which is that Twitter has been more specifically targeted as a political platform. However, Twitter has significantly fewer users. Like, they only have like 300 something million users, not all of whom are active, whereas Facebook has well over 2.5 billion users, many of whom are at least moderately active. And so there's much more resources on the part of Facebook to fact check individuals, whereas Twitter doesn't really have the same kind of resources. So this is sort of the solution which Twitter has been coming to, where again, it just sort of links other articles automatically through some kind of algorithm, and they don't seem to have like a sort of specific army of fact checkers who are doing this. Now, it's likely the case that there are sort of armies of people who might look over it and then add the link saying get the facts, etc., but they don't have an actual army of fact checkers individually. So that's pretty important. Now, this is actually pretty relevant when it comes to Donald Trump and Donald Trump's general history when it comes to mail-in ballots as well, because one of the things that we saw, for instance, during the Florida gubernatorial races last time around, was the Republican was actually really, really close in, really, really tight in with the Democrat, super, super close race. And what Donald Trump did is start criticizing, for instance, Broward County, whose results were coming in later and very leaning sort of Democrat because there were a lot of mail-in voting. Donald Trump said the results of Broward County were tainted, saying, oh, well, this is, not really fair, setting it up for a situation where they were able to declare victory much earlier on and make it look like it was a much more substantial win than it actually was, because as the votes got counted, the results actually became really, really close last time around. So Donald Trump actually has a really long sort of record of criticizing, sort of mail-in voting, saying that it's fraudulent, saying that it's not real. And so we're going to have to see how that plays out in the November election. Some people, I saw Chris Cillizza claiming that Donald Trump is, going to like deny the results of the election. I don't know that I'm going to go that far. I think that's a bit dramatic, kind of resistor fantasy. But we'll have to see how this plays out. We'll have to see how this plays out going forward. Is how Donald Trump engages with mail-in ballots going forward, especially given the pandemic, given the crisis that's been going on. We're going to see significantly higher numbers of mail-in voting, mail-in ballots. How is that going to play out in the general election? It's going to be something interesting to watch. So anyway, you can let me know what you think about this video. Do you agree with Twitter fact-checking Donald Trump? But if you did like this video, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button and consider subscribing. Thanks.